Well, for the next 2 episodes, we are going to talk all about habits. And yes, we have discussed these before on this podcast, so it is really great thing to continue to refresh ourselves on habits, why they are so important, and what they can really do to help you live a happier life. Specifically in today's episode, we will discuss the 6 habits you already have in your life, and actually how these habits are going to work to help you form new ones. First of all, please be sure to consider subscribing to our weekly email. That's 1 email per week where it comes out on Saturday mornings and I give you tons of information about what's coming up in future episodes as well as future content for our YouTube channel, which we also have a YouTube channel, which has got some great free yoga classes on it and some great how-to videos, guided meditations, and more. So you can check that out. The link is going to be in the show notes. You can also connect with me on Instagram at Justin Ricky Yoga, JustinRiccioga. And on Instagram, I post great things on the stories, great motivation, great pictures, great things that are just going to help us smile and move forward in our lives with more happiness. That's what we're here to do. So let's get on to today's topic with that being said, because I absolutely love talking about habits. And you know why? This is the one area of our lives that we've actually already done all the work on. We've done the work on creating habits. This is what's really exciting because there are so many areas of our life that we actually need to do a lot of hard work on. You know, we work to heal a lot on trauma. We work to grow and move ourselves into higher versions of ourselves. We work to maintain consistency and so on. But habits are something that we already all have, and all it takes is actually just a simple mindset switch to get yourself used to thinking about habits as a way to help you live a happier life. So before we define what a habit actually is, I want to set this episode up by exploring the term tapas. Now, this is where we are going to talk about the philosophy of yoga and using it to help our lives in a practical and everyday way. If you are familiar with the word tapas, you may hear this word translated to mean heat. And it also translates to another big word, and that big word, actually it's 2 words, is self-discipline. Self-discipline actually is nothing short of the desire and the need to become someone of character and strength. Tapas is a daily practice of breaking the habits that do not serve you and tapping into the habits that actually do serve you in the long term, not the short term. We're talking about long-term habits here, but you start those in the short term and they become longer term habits. And we're going to talk about that as we go along because there is a huge difference there. You see, when you start to create habits for yourself and you start showing up for yourself, that's where the growth begins. That's where the excuses go away. That's when you actually say, you know what? I deserve the best and I love myself. So I am going to create these habits to show myself how much I deserve happiness and how much I actually love myself. When you start practicing tapas, it means you're showing up for yourself. You're creating that future version of yourself, a version that is reaching towards a higher level of thinking, which in turn turns into a higher level of being. This version that you're reaching towards is more well-rounded, it's more balanced. And this is the version that will connect you to your purpose and the drive inside of you, which every single one of us has a drive inside of us. It's all about figuring out how to tap into that drive. Some of us make excuses to stay away from that drive. Some of us move towards things that we think are making us happier, but we're feeding our ego instead. Before we actually define what a habit is, I want us to ask ourselves this question. What are you actually looking to become? Now, maybe we can actually rephrase this question and say it this way. What is your practice of tapas going to lead you to manifest? You see, manifesting isn't just wishing. It's not just closing your eyes and thinking that you're going to win the lottery and everything is going to be just fine. Because if you win the lottery, Not everything is going to be just fine. How many times have you heard someone say that if, they run into some kind of cash windfall that, oh, then everything is going to be fine? Well, it's not. Because even if you have all the money in the world, you still are going to be faced with real world problems. You are still going to be faced with death in your life. You are still going to be faced with a body that needs to be taken care of. You are still going to be faced with things that need to get done. You're still going to be faced with the work that has to be done in your life. So the question is, what are you actually going to manifest through tapas? Manifesting is also not about putting 72 different pictures on a board and looking at them while your house itself or your apartment or wherever you live is a mess, where your job sucks right now, where you have lots of junk food everywhere, where you're not exercising, and you're in relationships with people who are constantly gaslighting you. Making a board like that, a vision board, some people call that, while you have all kinds of other disarray in your life, is not manifesting, my friends. Manifesting is actually doing the work to get to your dreams. It's the small steps that will get you to tap into that higher version of yourself. But you must walk in the fire first. So if you're asking yourself, what does all of this have to do with creating habits? Well, you have to walk in the fire, the tapas, so that you can cultivate discipline in your life that you actually already have. You're just going to apply that discipline and create it with different habits. Okay, so now that we understand that, let's talk about what habits actually are. We're going to talk about this in a science-based way, because we need the science to understand how our brains work, and we tie that to the philosophy of yoga. So habits are actually defined as nothing more than something you do without thinking, and it yields you some type of reward. I want you to listen to that again. It is nothing more than something you do without thinking. That's a habit, and it yields you a type of reward. So let me give you some examples of this. Number one, brushing your teeth. Most of us have a habit of brushing our teeth, and when we brush our teeth, the reward is the feeling of fresh breath and the clean mouth. And of course, there are other benefits to brushing your teeth, which we all know about. So we're not going to get into all of those benefits, but I just using this as an example. Another example of a habit that you already have is maybe in the morning you walk into your kitchen after you've gone, you've gotten out of bed, you've gone to the bathroom, and now you're going into the kitchen and you're getting ready to make yourself that first fresh cup of coffee, or maybe your tea, or maybe you like to drink your water first thing. And that is the reward you get, is either the little caffeine rush from the coffee, or maybe the feeling of hydration from the water, whatever it is. Another example is meditating before you go to bed. Maybe that's your habit. That rewards you with a calmer mind and maybe even a clear mind for sleeping. So those are some habits that you may already have. But I want to give you some more examples of some other habits where we're talking about the yielding of the reward. So some of us have drinking alcohol as a habit when we're stressed. Now, when we do that, that leads to a feeling of relaxation and a little bit of euphoria, right, in your mind, which washes your feelings away. That's your reward. We also might have a habit of texting while driving, which gives us the satisfaction of not having to worry about answering the friend that messaged you when you get home, and so it doesn't pile up and you don't forget about it. So the reward is, okay, I got that done. I responded to that text. And you're texting while you're driving. That could be another habit. You also may have a habit of having a cigarette after eating, which will light up that nicotine level in your body and give you that feeling of release and satisfaction. You know that feeling if you smoke or vape, right? You know that feeling. There are some similarities in these two examples, and then there are some differences. But at their core, they work exactly the same, according to the science and the research based around how habits form in our brains. Now, the similarities are that with each action, in all these examples I just gave you about brushing your teeth, walking into the kitchen, drinking alcohol, texting while driving, all those examples, there is a chemical that your brain starts to release, and that's dopamine. It floods your brain and body with that really good feeling after you complete something, right? You know that feeling. It's pretty darn immediate too. It usually happens within seconds. Like if you have a habit of eating chocolate right after a meal, your dopamine is going to spike and you will feel the pleasure literally seconds after you start eating it. Dopamine plays a particular role in reinforcing your behaviors in your brain in a matter of seconds. So it doesn't matter what the habit is, you're doing the habit over and over again because the dopamine gets released seconds after you perform the action. Now, the difference in those two categories that I just gave you examples of is that you get to determine what habits serve you more than just the immediate form of dopamine flowing through your body. The long-lasting effects of brushing your teeth give you a healthier mouth, healthier teeth, healthier gums. The practice of having your coffee first thing in the morning or whatever you drink in the morning or whatever you eat in the morning yields you time to have a nice routine that puts you first in the morning and kickstarts your body into that awake mode. And maybe your meditation before sleeping lets you create more mind-body awareness for when you're operating in your life with regards to how you react. So you see how those are giving you longer term results. But drinking alcohol may play a part in a long-term dependency, health issues, and a whole host of other psychological and physical hurdles. Same goes with smoking, same goes with texting in the car, because the texting in the car creates that false sense of thinking you can look at a screen while operating a deadly moving vehicle at high speeds with turns and twists. You see the difference between the habits of the brushing of the teeth, the morning, all of that, versus the alcohol. Okay, so those things are all giving us dopamine releases right away, but there's different long-term effects. So the fact of the matter is, you don't need to learn how to create habits. You already know how to do so. Your brain is wired to create habits. You already have habits. We're going to look at the 6 habits you already have right now in your life and what they do to affect your long-term self. Because this is how you need to look at habits. I'm going to say that again. This is how you need to look at habits. The long term, not the short term. Because now that you understand what actually happens when you perform a habit subconsciously and you get a reward, you know that some of the rewards will give you long-lasting results. Some will give you long-lasting results that are not so joyful. All right? Listen, I am going to give you a little secret too to actually helping you create the habits through which I will share with you at the end of this episode, because psychologists say that this works. And the philosophy of tapas and practicing being in the heat with self-discipline also is proven to work as well. So stay tuned to the end, because I'm going to give you a little secret of creating the habits that you need to create that are a little harder to create. All right? So let's look at these 6 big habits now. And remember, not all habits are fun and enjoyable, and it takes a mindful effort with routines to create habits. Habits don't just form on their own. You create a routine, and then your habits start to form. Because remember, habits are done automatically. Routines are something you have to be mindful of. And actually, on the next episode of this podcast, we're going to discuss 5 habits you can start to implement in your life to become a happier person. But remember that it still takes work and consistency, because anytime we're doing something new like this, like creating a habit where we have a new routine, our ego wants to freak out on us, because the ego is then losing control because of the automatic safety mechanism that the ego has in place. Our egos want us to do the same things all the time. That when you like to do the same thing all the time in every area of your life, that's your ego talking. That's not your mindfulness talking. So there's 2 different things there. So let's start with the 6 habits that we already have. Number 1, slouching when you walk. Now, why are we talking about slouching when we walk? Because a lot of people have this habit. Now, I bet you've never realized that you actually walk hunched over. Now, do you want to prove that this is a habit that most of us have? If you want to prove that, look around in the grocery store next time you're there. Look at how many hunched over people you see versus the straight spine. Now, I know we don't actually have straight spines. Okay, there's a slight curvature, but I'm talking about the posture, right? Your posture, your shoulders up and back. You're pulling into your core when you're walking. Your shoulders are up, back. you're leading with your chest. Okay. And here's the other reason why we all know that this habit's out there, because cell phones have made this worse for us. When you walk slouched over and hunched over, you are creating a spine curvature that takes pressure out of your abs and out of your chest and places it in your lower back and your hips. Why do you think people in this world are walking around with so many fucking back problems? Myself included, because we have walked our lives hunched over and we're constantly looking down at the cell phone or the computer screen or the laptop. So many people in their life face these back problems, and it's hard to pull the abs in when we walk, isn't it? It's hard to be mindful and pull that in. It's just easier to slump forward. And this is a reward that we don't use, the abs, because we don't feel the fire in the core. So we're just feeling at ease. So we're getting the reward of not feeling the abs. We're just getting that reward of, okay, this is easy to walk. I'll just walk hunched over. You see, that's one habit you already have, and you're already rewarding yourself by doing something easy. Now, number 2, here's another habit we have: procrastinating. Now, what is procrastinating? Procrastinating is a habit we all have because we all say we don't have enough time. Procrastinating is the act of putting things off until you feel like it. So when will that be? Some magic spell is just going to be cast on you and suddenly you're going to feel like it, like doing something. That is not going to happen. The reward we get, though, from procrastination is that sigh we get when we talk ourselves out of doing something that we don't want to do. And then we feel better because we actually don't want to do it. So do the sigh with me, right? Think about something you have to do. And then if you think, okay, I'm just going to put that off, think about that sigh. Let's all do it together. Oh, now I don't have to write that paper that's due on Friday. Oh, I'm not going to do that load of laundry. So that's your reward. Oh, great. I don't have to deal with it. And you feel that dopamine. But that paper and that laundry or that light bulb that needs changed is not going to get changed. If you don't do those things, here's what's going on, though. The business that you're trying to start doesn't get started. The resume you're creating is old. The friendship you need to move on from is still bothering you. Your kids are borrowing money from you because you just keep putting off that conversation. Get it? When you procrastinate and you do that sigh, that's a small thing. It gets affected on a bigger level. Number 3, the number 3 habit we all have that we know we're going to get a little relief from is complaining. Now, there's not one listener out there, and the speaker, myself, who does not complain in one form or another about something. But learning to control the complaining down to a minimum is such a life changer. When you complain, you expel all this negative energy out into the world, and you expel it onto other people. Complaining is a habit. It's not a part of your personality, so you should not label yourself as a complainer. It is a habit that you have. When something goes awry, you have a habit of bitching and whining about it instead of actually being grateful about it. This leads to a host of psychological and physical problems in our body, and it drives people away from you. No one likes to hear someone else constantly complaining unless they like to complain themselves a lot as well. So those folks who don't like to hear complaining are going to get driven away from you if you continue to complain. Number 4 is obsessing about social media. How many of you can get honest with yourself about this one? I know I had this problem in the past, and let me give you an example of what the old Justin used to do with social media. The old Justin would have life experiences and feel the need to post everything on social media so others could see what I'm doing so that they could validate what I'm doing. And that would give me that feeling of dopamine. The old Justin would also look at everyone's toxic timelines, I call them, quote, toxic timelines. Toxic timelines, in my opinion, are the timelines that you look at where someone is showing you every move that they make all day long. You could be out there posting your every single move, and you could justify that by saying, I'm trying to build an audience. But when you're posting everything on social media, That's where your focus is going, is posting things on social media and not to the actual gratitude you're getting from the experiences you're getting in your life. So I call those toxic timelines. And I would actually get really upset about how perfect everyone else is and how many likes they got, instead of, why am I not getting these likes? Why am I not getting comments, etc. What is one of the first things that you might do in the morning? Is it looking at social media? What about when you reinforce that with everyone else and say things like this? Oh, I can't get off Instagram or Twitter. Oh my God, I just love Twitter. I love Instagram. I'm always on Instagram. Or you say things like, oh, I look at everyone's stories. I don't miss a beat. I don't miss it. Yeah, that momentary dopamine of nosiness is nice for your indulgence, the indulgence of your anxiety. But when you're using your precious seconds to see what Bertha had for lunch, or what Sam said on his story, or where Juliet is flying to, rather than practicing your piano, rather than writing the songs you want to write, rather than building your online marketplace, rather than going to the gym, rather than watching your kids grow up, if your face is in the phone, you're not watching your kids grow up. If you have kids, burying your face in social media is killing them in what already has been a tough 2 or 3 years for these kids, because they were ripped away from each other. Their facial expressions were covered by masks, and their immune systems were suppressed. This isn't just an opinion, by the way. This is what has happened according to the research. So adding to this with your head in the social media is going to create long-lasting issues for your kids. Number 5, worrying and fear. How many of you are afraid of what may happen in your life? Oh, if this happens, oh, I'm afraid that this will happen. I have known, and I do know people who are afraid to do a lot of things because they have fear of what may happen. And not surprisingly, these are the same people who worry nonstop. We all picked up the habit of worrying and being afraid from traumatic things that happened to us as kids. And not one human being has not escaped a childhood without trauma. Everyone has had some kind of trauma in it, okay? The difference, though, is some people were able to work through some of that trauma and some are still hanging out in the trauma. I want to be clear with you. You are not practicing tapas if you are constantly afraid. You have to work to walk in the fire for a temporary few seconds or minutes to see how amazing the outcome would be. And if it's not, well, then you've learned a valuable lesson. So the outcome will be amazing. Either you're going to experience something that you thought maybe was going to be fulfilling, or it's not going to be fulfilling, but you're going to have learned a lesson. Avoidance through worry and fear cripples your ability to be happy almost more than most anything else will. Our bodies want dopamine, remember? So when you have fear and you stop doing something or you won't do something because of fear, you're giving yourself that momentary sense of relief. Okay, now I don't have to deal with this because I was afraid, I'll just avoid it. You have to walk in the fire sometimes in order to create the life that you want to create. Now, number 6, I want to lump into a few habits that are directly related to cluttering in your space or your mind, because these all go together. So number 6 is kind of all of these together. Messy workplaces and desks, throwing your garbage everywhere in the car or littering, so you may have these habits, leaving clothes or towels or washcloths or blankets all over the floor, or leaving your bed unmade. What about cluttering your body with artificial ways to enhance your appearance? Putting your gum somewhere other than the trash. Leaving your napkins, your food scraps, or other things from your dining experience, which when you sit down to eat, my friends, you should be honoring yourself to sit down to a wonderful meal that you are blessed to enjoy. And when you throw your food or food scraps or napkins, or you just knock things off the table and it goes onto the floor and you don't pick it up, that's a habit. Because now you have the relief of, oh, it's just going to go there and I'll pick it up or someone else will pick it up. Folks, these habits are a signal to feeling good, but you've turned these habits into things that are robbing you of happiness. If you can't take 3 seconds to pick the napkin up off the floor that you've dropped, you are not going to take 3 seconds to do that extra rep with your weights in the gym. If you can't be happy with how you look, you will talk to yourself like you're worthless, and that creates low self-esteem. But if you can't be happy with the way you look and you're getting ready to stand in front of people and teach them something or give some kind of speech, you're going to have negative self-talk. So I want to talk to you now about the secret to creating new habits out of routines based on walking through the fire of tapas and disciplining yourself for success. And here is the secret. When you need to create a new habit, all you have to do is give yourself a reward. That's it. Let me give you an example. The local yoga studio that I teach at and I practice at, there's often like a little jar of chocolates there. They're little tiny mini chocolates. So every time I actually take a class, I like to either look at the chocolate or actually have a chocolate, because to me, that's my reward. Looking at long-term results is overwhelming. That's why I mentioned manifesting at the beginning of this episode, because if you manifest that big board, that $1 million house you want, you may not even have $100 in the bank. So $1 million is not going to happen tomorrow, folks. The work has to be done to get there. You have to practice rewarding yourself with something. So walk through the fire to get to where you need to be. Because my friends, I promise you, when you treat yourself to something nice, when you create these new routines that give you habits that your brain forms, it makes a world of difference, and it links to how your brain is wired and how it works. You already have this in you. You're already practicing it when you pick up that drink at the end of your workday because you want to, quote, take the edge off. You already know how to do that. You just need to switch your mindset to do something that is not that easy, to pick up that drink. Maybe it's laying out your clothes the night before you have to work out in the morning. You create the habit. Now, we will discuss more examples of how to create healthy habits, and you need to create them right now. We're going to do that in our next episode, because if you want to raise your level of thinking and become a happier person, you are going to take this seriously, and you are going to start having routines that lead to healthy habits. And suddenly, you know what happens, my friends? You start doing things on autopilot and you get the dopamine reward and your life starts to change. This all works together. So we're going to talk about those 5 habits you need to create right now in our next episode. And I hope today's episode helped you think about habits a little bit differently, because there actually isn't a lot of work to do. You've already done the work. Your brain is wired to do the work. You are stopping yourself from doing the work. You are the one laying in bed in the morning when you can get your butt up and go to the gym. You're stopping yourself. No one else is stopping you. So you can create that habit. And we're going to create them in our next episode. Okay, one last thing. The content in the Strength, Yoga, and Freedom podcast is not intended as a replacement or a substitution for the advice of any medical professional, like a physician, a psychologist, or a qualified therapist, or any other medical professional. It is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only.